Pizza presents SCP. The Steve Dangle Podcast with your hosts, Steve Dangle and Adam Wilde.
We have a very special guest in studio, Steve Dangle.
Yes,
Since your name is on the show, we should have you do the introductions.
Oh, I thought it was Steve.
I'm the special guest every show.
Right.
Yes.
This is the Steve Dangle Podcast with Adam Wilde and Jesse Blake with special guest Steve Dangle.
Yes.
And special guest, we have Tom Poraszka from, did I get that?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, from GeneralFanager.com.
Now, Tom, before we get started here, I didn't tell you this before, but we need you to just direct. These mics are super directional, so if you talk off to the side, like you got it. Well, not eat it, but just hit it straight on because they're not the greatest mics in the world.
Okay.
We'll be honest.
What I was saying about my wife before we started the show, talking to the mic, love.
Yes, yeah. But that was on the phone. Now, I want to play you guys some audio before we really get into the show because, Tom, we have so many questions for you, and it's great that the Frederick Andersen stuff broke yesterday because the tradition on this show is that we do a show talking about what may happen and something completely different happens the next day. But in this case, we actually have some news to talk about before.
Until the hockey world collapses while he's in studio and we literally hold one of the best websites in the blogosphere back.
Yeah, which we can't do. Bruce Boudreau was on Dean Blundell and Company this morning on Sportsnet 590 The Fan, and he was talking about whether or not he knew that Randy Carlyle was going to take over for him once he was fired in Anaheim, and I think you guys will find his answer very funny.
Were you surprised they hired Randy Carlyle the other day for his second go-around?
Well, he was at every one of our games, so it didn't surprise me.
Did you know he was there, Bruce?
I knew he was there every night.
Did you ever ask, hey, can you tell me what this guy's doing here? Or did you just kind of know in the back of your mind and that's why you said you kind of knew it was happening?
Well, I knew he lived in San Diego, and quite frankly, still wanted to get back into coaching. So it made a lot of sense for him to be coming to the games, whether it was looking at Anaheim or whether looking at any other NHL teams. But that's how you get jobs, is to stay visible. And Randy did a great job of doing that, and I'm happy for him.
Did he come in and measure things in your office, Bruce?
New blinds?
No.
That's pretty interesting.
No, I said before.
Pretty interesting.
I said before, I don't have great sources or anything, but I had reason to believe that the Ducks were looking at Carlisle in the fall. So it is hilarious to hear this all come out now. Carlisle was at basically all the games. He replaced Boudreau anyway. Poor guy. Poor Bruce.
Right.
Now he's got to be in Minnesota.
And they have made some questionable decisions. They have made some questionable decisions. And that the reason I played that clip and with Tom here, I want to talk about that because you let your head coach go who in 7-8 years in the league has 7 or 8 President's trophies?
Or division titles. President's trophies.
Basically, every year he's in the league, his teams do well in the regular season. Now, the playoffs are so hard, and they're set up as such in the NHL that it doesn't matter how many times you make the playoffs. It doesn't mean you're guaranteed a championship, right? And unfortunately, sometimes you run into great teams or hot teams or just a little bit of bad luck.
Yaroslav Halak.
So then they fire him. And then they trade arguably, the goalie who is their number one guy.
If you ask Jen Neal from Yahoo Sports and noted Duck fan, she's pretty upset. Ducks got rid of their number one goalie.
And they hang their hat on, and this is a team that has to win now, they hang their hat on a goalie that has played 63 career NHL games. John Gibson. Nothing against him. I don't doubt that he's a great player, but that's quite the risk. Now on the other side, Tom, and this is where you really come in. I want to talk about what this deal does to the Toronto Maple Leafs, and then we're gonna talk full on General Fanager. We have so many questions for you about that, but
we only bring you up every show.
Being the center of the universe, we want to talk about the Leafs stuff first. So Frederick Andersen, Toronto Maple Leafs. We've got a 5-year contract, and the average is $5 million. Correct?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. So when you look at a deal like this, because you look at all the deals, for you, what do you think about it?
I think it makes sense. They've obviously had goaltending as something that they need to address for a little while. So I think bringing in Andersen addresses that hole. They were probably going to be looking at addressing that hole this summer just because the goalie market is probably at its peak this summer with expansion coming up next year. And then a guy like James Reimer, Dangle's favorite.
What's up?
Available on the market. So I think they were going to look for a goalie, and I think getting someone that's 26 years old makes sense. They're probably, I think with the Matthews upcoming pick, they've probably got a chance to expedite the rebuild that they were thinking. I don't think you ever plan to win the lottery, but I think when you do, then you have an opportunity to kind of expedite things. So I think Andersen fits in terms of age. That's a time when a goalie becomes at his prime, and I think the deal makes sense as well. 5 years at $5 million is, I think, ranked like 22nd among NHL goalies or something.
And we're
like
talking about the 15th or 16th best goalie overall stats. That's something that I read. I don't know how you do that.
It depends what stats you put stock in. Like, I saw a lot of advanced ones that weren't as kind to Andersen. His save percentage is pretty good, like his overall save percentage. Obviously, his win percentage is through the roof, but
he's on a pretty good team.
Yes.
And he's 6'4", and they like that.
But Tom made a great point before the show is he going to come to the Leafs and make less than Jonathan Bernier? Good luck.
Yeah.
Good luck with that.
To make, especially if you're bringing him in and anointing him the number one and then asking him to take a pay cut over the number two. So I think giving him that money shows faith, and you're investing in what you hope is your future number one.
Yep. Leafs get a pending restricted free agent goalie from a Californian team. It has never gone wrong for them before.
And that's fair.
Except for the two times that it went disastrously wrong.
It's never been this group before. It has never been this management group, and I think they deserve the benefit of the doubt because they've done a pretty good job so far.
Okay, I hope so. Hey, look, I'm not doubting them. I'm just preparing myself mentally.
Well, it's okay to doubt them. It's okay to go, I don't know that this deal is a slam dunk.
Oh, it's not.
I don't think it is either. But I don't think either that it's people see 5 years in Toronto now, and it's almost like a meteorite striking. Like they're so afraid of anything over 3 years in a contract because of what has happened to us before, because of the situations that we have got in and that we are still in with guys like Joffrey Lupul, who we'll get to. But at the same time, honestly, in your honest estimation, you look at the numbers every single day. You're uploading this information every single day. For a goalie of Frederick Andersen's stature, he goes to UFA next year at the very latest, correct? Like if he were to sign a 1-year deal, he'd be UFA next year. What's a guy like that get on the open market?
Well, you look at someone like Kari Ramo last year, who was probably the premier goalie on the market.
Which is hilarious.
Yeah. And he got 3.8 to re-sign with Calgary for 1 year. So that's only taking 1 year away from his unrestricted free agency. Whereas here you're taking 4 for Andersen. I think you're probably at the number that was right, and maybe you even got a little bit less than what you would have been paying had you waited until mid-season or something like that. So, yeah, I think they just banked on the fact that they see something they like and they believe in the goalie, so they decided to pay up. I think what also made it possible is the deals that you signed with Morgan Rielly and Nazem Kadri, like. Both those deals were below market value. I think everyone was surprised when those numbers came out, and so now they're equipped to kind of make a move that maybe is paying market value, or even if it is a little bit over, I think it makes sense.
You get to look at the numbers every day. Do you notice a trend in inflation? Like, do you ever have to? Because what we've talked about sometimes is we have to readjust what like a first line winger is in our head. Like, or you know what? A second line center, I think, is a great example, because we keep looking at these guys making $4 or $5 million, and then I realized it was the 20th time in a row that we had argued about that, and I'm like, maybe that's just what a second line center makes in this league.
Yeah, I mean, you can look at it as a percentage of the total cap. It's a little bit easier to kind of maintain your look when the cap isn't going up significantly. We don't expect it to go up much this coming year, so I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of inflation this next year. But yeah, you definitely sort of want to look at it more as like a percentage basis of the total cap amount.
Right. Okay. So based on what percentage, rather than the amount of money, it's how much are they eating up?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Which is hard for guys like us who are terrible at math.
Oh, that's why we have you on.
I think we need to have on General Fanager a percentage cap number. So next to each player, it's like percentage of cap that this person is currently eating up.
That's a great idea. Wait, do you have that already?
I don't currently, but it's in the works.
Oh, okay, great. Oh, sorry. Did we
4 months of coding. Hey, you should just do this.
This is called the
8 years of work, Adam.
This is called the F off Adam Wild stat at generalfanager.com.
Just like plug this in here. Just do it. Put it there.
Now wait though. So you just made the suggestion, and you're like, make it be so. But I had heard that the expansion draft function that is now on generalfanager.com was partly or fully, I'm not sure, the suggestion of a GM in the NHL saying, "Hey, please do this for us."
Not a GM. I did have a conversation with someone that works for a team, and they were interested in something like this. They kind of helped me out in terms of the information and the rules around exemptions and protection. And we built it. I started building it a little bit before the rules leaked out, and then I think Chris Johnson of Sportsnet had the first report of all the rules that we had before when we started building, and so that kind of expedited the idea of kind of trying to launch it. So we didn't sleep for the next few days, and then got it out on the Tuesday, I think, after the Friday leak.
I have it open here, and it's quite interesting because it really shows it talks about the protected players, right? So how many players have to be protected right now on each team, and it really shows, I think, a lot of where these teams are at. You know, it tells you a lot about the team that you probably already knew. But I mean, like the Chicago Blackhawks, 7 players are already protected. So they will actually have 4 choices going into the expansion draft. If they don't make any moves from now until then, which they will, 4 choices as to who they protect, and everybody else has to be exposed.
That might actually be 8 that they need to protect. There was a report that came out that Artem Anisimov also has a no move clause.
Oh, wow.
So we're trying to confirm that.
Wow.
So yeah, they could be pretty much in a bind.
Now, they're the highest in the league, but you look at the Columbus Blue Jackets, who, at least the Blackhawks are good. Columbus has 6 players already protected.
Oh, that's so terrible.
And we got the Minnesota Wild, 4 players protected, and you know that those are tough deals. Pittsburgh Penguins, they probably don't care. They've got 5 players protected.
Yeah.
Let me guess. Crosby,
Malkin, Kessel. Fleury, maybe?
Letang.
I think Fleury's on there and Letang. I think it's those 5.
That's fair. I'm okay with that. And listen, if I'm Chicago, I'm pretty okay with the guys that they're protecting anyway, right? Like all the guys with no move clauses on Chicago, with maybe, is Brent Seabrook protected, do you think?
He's got a no move as well, I believe. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. But
even
the
so,
one
he's
thing
amazing.
with Chicago is they kind of lucked out, and based on the rules that we've seen so far, Artemi Panarin won't have to be protected. He'll be exempt. So,
how is that?
So
how is that possible?
Well, Adam, he's a rookie,
and he's Chicago,
just like Connor McDavid, right?
What we've been told is 2 years or less on an NHL standard player contract.
And how long does that NHL standard playing contract? Does that mean 2 full years?
Correct.
How many games is that?
So it's 10 plus professional games.
So Nylander and those guys will be okay too.
Nylander, as far as we know right now, will be exempt. Soshnikov, I don't think will be. You might want to check the tool there.
You might want to check my website. Well, what a power move.
Well, the reason I ask, I mean, it says, and this is what's great for the Toronto Maple Leafs right now, is that 0 players have to be protected. So it's all in their court, which is great because a team like that, you're not really sure what your team's going to look like in a year. I mean, we know sort of what they're going to look like in 3 months, but it could be completely different even then, right?
Yeah, and I think the Leafs are probably in one of the easiest scenarios from an expansion standpoint because we've had a number of comments submitted to us that it's hard to find enough guys to protect on the Leafs. Because a lot of their high-end commodities are exempt. They don't have to be protected. So a guy like Nylander, a guy like Marner, a guy like Matthews, those guys won't have to be protected. So you're getting into the weeds of protecting guys that you don't really care if you lose or not, potentially. But yeah, I don't think the Leafs are really all that concerned about who they'll have to protect. And I think they're probably trying to prey on teams that are...
Like the Anaheim Ducks.
Exactly.
Who need to. Okay.
Riley, Gardner, JVR. All right, I think we're done here.
Yeah. Well, you know what's shocking to me? The most shocking. How many players do you think Philadelphia has to protect? And you can't answer this, Tom. Guess.
Okay, Drew. I'm going to say 3.
1.
1.
Philadelphia is in much better shape that way than you would think. That's a team that is struggling and struggling against the cap. And by the way, they're supposedly the front runners for Steven Stamkos.
They're the front runners
And
for
Detroit.
everyone. Somehow Philly sneaks into
Somehow
everything.
Detroit's in there with $7.5 million of Datsuk's contract sitting on the books.
Yeah, I think they'll move Datsyuk. I don't see them keeping him. I think Ken Holland came out on the weekend and he said that if it doesn't make sense, then they won't move him. I think that's easy to say because you're probably trying to drive down the price and say, hey, I don't have to move him if I don't want to. There's probably only one team that could take him, and that's Arizona, because Carolina and New Jersey already took on some contracts. So Arizona's in a position of power, and I'm sure Chayka's trying to push his might as he's kind of just starting out. But yeah, I think they'll move Datsyuk. I think they'll find a way. The worst case scenario, I think they move him with retained salary, like move him with 50% retained, and you still get 3.75 off the books. And maybe that opens up a few more teams that are interested.
So I guess I'd like to clear some things up with Datsyuk. So is there any actual money being exchanged?
So that's part of the reason that I think Datsyuk will be really easy to move is because you don't pay him a dime. So a guy like Mark Savard, he's also insured, so that's not much of an issue. But a guy like Brian Bickle, if you have to trade him, he's probably playing somewhere, so he's getting paid. He's on a one-way deal. He's making his full value of the contract. So that makes him a lot more difficult to trade to a team that's low on the cap because that team's probably also a budget team and not ready to spend on a team that's not going to compete. So a guy like Datsyuk, you essentially just lower the floor by acquiring him. You're getting $7.5 million of cap space for no actual cost.
Wow.
Because he's moving to the KHL and he's going to be paid there. There's no reason you would pay him. You suspend his contract and the cap hit still stays because of the 35 plus rule. But yeah, he's a free cap hit and lowers the cap floor for a team.
And there was talk about his contract being terminated and that causing complications. That hasn't happened, right?
No, so his contract hasn't been terminated, and I'm sure it won't be until he's traded. So there was some early reports about how the Red Wings reported that they would intend to terminate his contract. I think that the intention of whatever was said was that his contract will be terminated at some point, but it will be by whatever team is accepting a cap hit.
This is my problem with the CBA. A guy gets up and leaves.
It's fantasy dollars.
Well, yeah, but he gets up and leaves and that somehow still counts? Like, this is not a retirement. He's straight up leaving. Why is that okay? And how, by the way, does this happen? Datsyuk goes and the cap still stays, but Kovalchuk left and it's cool for New Jersey.
I think the answer's in Toronto right now.
I don't. Yeah, you're right. I just don't get that.
Well, the Devils had to pay a fine, which I think was then reduced.
Then it was rescinded.
Rescinded.
They got their picks back.
Well, the rule that affects Datsyuk is in place partly because of Kovalchuk. Like the rule was brought in so that 35 plus deals, if the guy leaves, you're stuck with the cap hit, and that's essentially so that you're not benefiting from a lower cap hit for the years he's here because you've baked in a lower salary in the last year, which is probably what Datsyuk.
Who does that help?
It just prevents teams from backloading deals when they know a player's not going to play those years.
This, Adam, so many.
But I still don't understand who that helps.
So many of the dumb things in this, the NHL, Adam, is who it helps. So many dumb things in the CBA are because NHL GMs cannot help themselves, and they will do things like that. So you got to write things in to prevent it.
Oh, that is frustrating because I just feel like if a guy gets up and freaking leaves. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing Detroit can do. Datsyuk, apparently from a week after he signed this 3-year extension that he signed, said, I want to go.
I heard it was before. I heard Detroit had to beg him to come back. So I sent out a tweet slamming him. I said, Pavel Datsyuk was amazing. He's a legend, potentially a Hockey Hall of Famer, brought cups to Detroit.
Yeah.
And he is screwing his hockey team worse than any player has ever screwed their team in recent memory. And a lot of Detroit fans actually came out and were like, he didn't even want this.
No.
Detroit asked him to stay. They knew what the risks were. Here's the world's smallest violin. Too bad. It's their stupid fault. It's their stupid fault.
I don't know.
What makes it a little more annoying is what Tom said. It's going to be easy for them to get out of this pickle. It probably won't even cost them that much.
Yeah,
Well-
it's hard to say. Like it sounds like, based on the reports that are coming out, it sounds like it will cost them a fair bit. But
really?
I'm still
Okay.
skeptical. I don't know. We'll see what it comes down to. But
If you can get rid of all the money, I'm sure it'll cost them. But if you get rid of half, like
That's a lot of money, man. What, 3.75?
sure, but there's teams that can do it.
Yep.
Is there not?
yeah, there is. And obviously Arizona's the biggest one, but I think there's other ones. Like New Jersey still has a ton of cap space. Maybe they're more inclined to do it for 3.75, especially if it's free. Like it doesn't cost them anything. And if you get an asset for it, it makes a lot of sense. And to be honest with you, going into this offseason, there was a part of me that kind of thought maybe Toronto would be in on those kind of things, but I think they've kind of put in their flag and have said that we no longer are looking to flex our cap muscle to bring in assets. We have enough assets. We have the team that we're comfortable going ahead with, and I think that's what the Andersen deal signaled.
Well, it is the kind of the most significant acquisition since the Bernier trade. Like
That's what Chris Johnson said, and that's actually... I hadn't even thought of it. I was thinking it's obviously the biggest trade for the Leafs since the Phil Kessel deal.
Yep.
But the Leafs have just been sending guys away for so long. I'd forgotten what it was like for them to buy. And yeah, it's
and
their
it's
biggest
weird.
buy since Bernier, who they are replacing, by the
So
way.
you, Steve, by the way, just so we're clear, you're uncomfortable with this. You're
With what?
uncomfortable with Andersen.
I mean, why? Why do you think that?
I get the sense. Well, you said earlier. I mean, I won't deny you this. It's a bit of a gamble. There is a gamble element to it. But when I heard your response and we were all here for it, you were like, "Well, I don't know. I don't know if I trust." What is it?
Okay, so he's making good money.
Yes.
I have faith in Andersen. He doesn't seem, I don't think he's got anything in his track record that suggests he goes through long periods of just being a bum. But he also has long periods of just being kind of decent, just kind of being steady, which I'm okay with. I know he's not going to be bad. I'm just not convinced he's going to be $5 million good. But Jesus, being a Leaf fan this long, I think I take it.
Yeah.
I think I take it.
Hey, good is better than what we've had.
Also, I think a decent to good starting goaltender in the NHL makes $5 million now.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Unless you luck into Matt Murray.
Well,
yeah, which and that's the thing too. Like they gave up picks, and I understand that they gave up picks, and it's always hard to give up picks. In hindsight, people always look back and go, "Well, what did they do with those picks too?" Right? Oh, this created this NHL, and the thing is, that's a risk. Pick 30 is a risk. Pick whatever the second round is next year is a risk. They all are, all of them. Even the first overall pick is a risk, and when you could trade a couple risks for a guy that you can at least, I mean, from his track record, guarantee that he's pretty good. He's above league average in most areas. I think that's a pretty square deal. And the thing with a trade is that it's not supposed to be a highway robbery. It's supposed to be here's a fair thing for a fair thing. Right?
Life isn't NHL 16.
Yes. And that's where I think people get it confused. It's like, well, what do you mean? We didn't steal them from Anaheim. Well, of course you didn't steal them from... They're Anaheim. There's a reason why that team is good. They have good management. They've made some questionable decisions this offseason. There's no question. But at the same time, we now have a goaltender who potentially could be pretty good.
No team's perfect.
No.
I mean, so many people look at Stan Bowman as this Greek god, and then they looked at the Bickle deal and went, ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah. Well, think of all the players they've traded away. Like, think of Brandon Saad. Think of all the tough decisions they've had to make because of this cap structure. Now, when we come
Think
back...
of all the work they've had to made Tom have to.
Yeah, exactly. When we come back, we are going to talk about Stamkos. That's the thing that I want to get to, and I want to talk about the rest of the cap, including things that you might change about it. Because nobody really works, besides NHL teams, more intimately with the cap than you do, Tom.
Yeah.
I want to know what you would change about it.
Sure.
And a whole bunch of other questions that we have that we're just dying to ask General Fanager's Tom Poraszka. When we come back on Sportsnet 590 The Fan. We're with Tom Poraszka. Poraszka.
Yeah,
Poraszka?
You got it.
GeneralFanager.com. He is the smartest person in most rooms that he walks into. Definitely this one. Definitely this one. And he's uncomfortable with me saying that. I could see you kind of screw up your face when I said it.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with that, but
Well, you created a pretty incredible website that we look to every day. Doing the show, we look at it every single day.
Facebook.
And
Oh, is that not you?
That was pretty good. All right.
Oh, okay,
Took me a while
sorry.
to actually catch that one.
You're not the guy from the movie? Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
So, Tom, what I want to know from you right now, do you have the definitive list of teams that can actually go after Stamkos and a $9 to $10 million contract? Do you know?
Yeah, I don't know if it's a definitive list. There's obviously teams that could do it a lot easier than others. A team like Buffalo is primed to do that sort of thing. Whether you really see them doing that or not, I don't know. But
don't you think Tim Murray would just like to do that to stab Toronto Maple Leafs fans?
It sounds like he's trying to make a splash this summer. Like it sounds like he's ready. So, and in a media conference today, he mentioned General Fanager. So,
so you're a fan of Tim?
I am now.
You're a Fanager of Tim? Sorry.
It's like the website.
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead. So
Yeah, like
Buffalo?
another team is like Florida has a chance to do it, but they're probably pretty deep at center. I don't know if they go for something like that. But then, like you look at a team like Detroit, if they're able to move Datsyuk, and then they've got Howard and Mrazek in net and can only protect one in the expansion draft next year. If they move Howard, that's another 5 something. That's a lot of money made available. So I could see that happening. You mentioned Philly earlier. I'm not so sure.
I've literally heard, even on Sportsnet, that they're the top contenders for them in Detroit. Which And that's the thing, is that there's certain teams that operate as if there is no cap.
Yeah. So
you've seen this.
Well, I've been left scratching my head trying to figure out how they do certain moves. So like, we've seen a couple of them. Like there was one where LA made a trade at the just before the trade deadline last year, where they were retaining salary on one guy and acquiring another guy that the other team was retaining salary on. So it was mismatched retaining salaries just to make the deals work. And
was that Scuderi?
That was a Scuderi deal. Yeah. So it was, and I think Ehrhoff was going the other way.
I think you're right.
Yeah. So it was one that took some figuring out, but those are the deals that I love. Like they make it so interesting to be in this and doing this. It's so much fun to kind of like look at a deal, break it down, and try to figure out and explain to people why the heck it was just done. Like there were so many occasions where the Leafs did things that people didn't really realize what was going on under the scenes, and we somehow sometimes picked it up, and I'm sure we missed a lot of the stuff that they kind of brushed under the rug. But some of the things they did, like the Fratton trading him to Ottawa, but then bringing him back to play for the Marlies, so they got his contract off the 50-man limit, but allowed him to keep playing with the Marlies that were a Calder Cup contender. So that was an interesting one, and one that no one else really picked up on, but one that we thought was really interesting. So all that sort of stuff is really fun to kind of watch.
How did this site even start? What happened?
Well, I was a big fan of Cap Geek, and I think you guys probably were too. I think everybody was. And when Matthew unfortunately passed away and shut down the site in January of last year, we kind of were still instinctively going to capgeek.com. Like I would be in arguments with friends at a bar and I'd be typing in Cap Geek and then remember that it's down. And so my first thought was, all right, well, maybe I'll take a stab at this. I didn't really think anything would come of it, but at the same time, I was trying to learn some programming languages. And
so you didn't know any?
I knew some, but the one I built the site in, I learned on the go. So it was kind of the motivation to learn this language. And when I launched the site, it was kind of like, okay, learn the language. I guess I'll move on to the next project, thinking nothing would come of it. And then on day 2 of the site being live, a couple blogs picked it up, and then it just kind of went out of control. I've told the story a number of times, but I was in a meeting at work, and I come back to my phone being dead on my desk, and the guy I was sitting beside was like, hey, man, your phone was going nuts for some reason. So I log into my computer, and I see I have 9,000 unread emails in my email account, and that's how many new Twitter followers we had. So
I was one of them, by the way. I was a follower day 1 or 2.
I probably added to that.
It was the most bizarre feeling I've ever had.
I think we featured you on Hockey Night. I think that's when I was writing for Sophia during the playoffs, and I was like, guess what? There's a new Cap Geek, basically.
So you committed him to it. Whether he wanted...
His fame is like my doing.
Basically. Yeah, well...
Pretty much.
Pretty much.
I mean, all that work edited, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. But I said a thing once.
I gave you the shout out on Hockey Night, so...
I might have even hit him with a retweet.
Whoa.
Right?
Well, then you're in the money. Yeah. Then you've made it.
And now I owe some royalties or something.
Something like that.
And I gave you pizza today. I mean, jeez.
So now you're stuck with this website. That is a lot of work, and a CBA that is very unclear in terms of. I mean, do you have a copy of the CBA?
Yeah, and anyone can get it. It's available online. We have it up on the site, and NHL.com has it too. One of the first things I did when I launched the site was I started to realize that a lot of people were kind of messaging us, asking questions about the CBA that I had no idea on. I went into it thinking I knew the CBA well, and now I realize I didn't know a single thing. Mm-hmm. So one of the first things I did was I developed scripts and storyboards for a video series that we did with a player agent out of Chicago named Scott Bartlett. And we did these videos called CBA Explained, where I wrote the scripts in conjunction with him, and that was kind of my big learning process into really diving into the CBA.
Which, by the way, thank God you did those.
Yeah.
I watched them all. I don't understand them all, but I definitely watched them all, and they definitely helped my understanding a lot more, so thank you.
They're a good reference point, and anytime we kind of get a question like about qualifying offers, we find the easiest way to answer that question is just to share those videos. I mean, they're not the greatest production value. They're videos that we're happy with, but had we done them again, we'd do them a little bit differently, but we had a lot of fun.
Well, don't worry, you'll have the chance in like 2018 anyway, right? I mean, they are opting out of this deal, so I mean, it's coming.
Yeah.
It's coming.
No.
Now, you've got this website. You are, I guess, a full season in, and has it become your full-time job?
Not quite. Like, I do it probably as much as anyone would on a full-time job. I'd probably guess around 40 to 60 hours a week I spend on the site.
And you have another job.
And then I do like some freelance stuff and stuff to pay the bills. So, but it's a lot of fun. It's when you work on something like this and you love it, it doesn't feel like you're working on it at all. I'm like trying to find more time to work on it because I enjoy it so much.
Do you have some kind of like a GoFundMe page like linked on the site?
We don't.
You're nuts.
Yeah.
I'm just letting you know.
We've been kind of okay with that. We had advertising up for a little while and it was paying the bills, so we weren't really worried about it. We've since taken down advertising. We're kind of seeing what we can do without it, and we think it might be a little bit of a better user experience without it, so we'll see. But
what does that mean? You don't make any money off it?
Currently not, but we've got some things in the works that might change that in the future. So
okay.
You sound like a confident man.
I would think with the traffic that website probably pulls, I can only imagine. I don't know anything about website traffic, but I can imagine that it does enough that there are other propositions coming your way.
I don't know. Not really anything that you would think. Like we do get the, hey, are you selling the site? I'll buy it from you occasionally, but I don't know if any of those are really serious, and it's not something I'm really willing to entertain. I think the site's kind of, I don't know, you hear it all the time when someone makes something, it's their baby. So it's kind of, it would be hard to give up, and it's become so much of a lifestyle for me that I don't know what I would do with all the time I spent with it.
We want you to make money off this though. Just as fans of the website, we want you to make money off this, not only because you deserve to, but because we want this to be your full-time job.
We kind of want it to still be a thing.
Yeah. Like, this is the thing, is we don't want this to go away. And so understand that from a user experience, if you do have ads, well, we get it. We totally get it.
I totally get that, and I understand where you're coming from. I was a big user of War on Ice. I was friends with the guys that ran it, and it sucks that it's down now. But it's hard to imagine the scenario where if you were running a site that was not making you money and was actually costing you money, and you were offered by a GM, hey, come work for us, that you wouldn't take it in a heartbeat. So I totally understand what those guys did. Totally happy for them, really happy that they are where they are, and I hope for the best for them, but it sucks to see a great resource like that go down. And so part of the things I'm working on, in addition to all the stuff that we do for the site, is trying to figure out a way to make it profitable, monetize the site, and make it in a way that we can continue to build it and make it better, bring on people, and really make it something that can be even close to as good as CapGeek, because I don't think we're anywhere near there. Matthew did an incredible job with what he did, and I don't know how he did it, but he did a great job. And so I think we're probably still just a fraction of what he had going, and I think the end goal is to build on what he did, get there, and even go further with it.
What Matt did with CapGeek, it really was like that website was the pyramids. And all this time has passed, and we're still trying to figure out how he made it.
Yeah.
And now he's not here to tell us either, right?
And yeah, it's a real shame. But you mentioned and you mentioned other people. How many people work on General Fanager?
The day-to-day is just me. So I've written every line of code. I've pretty much entered probably almost every contract. But when I was building the site, I did have, like, my now wife was entering contracts for me. I've had, yep.
That's a keeper. Love. That's a good one.
Yeah. Holy smokes.
Don't I know it? I mean, my parents have helped. They try to find the time. They try to help support in any way they can. Everybody tries to help, and I've had friends, and during peak periods, anybody that can is always willing to come help. So I've got a lot of friends coming down to help with free agency and with the draft. They always help at trade deadline and all. Do
you just order a bunch of pizzas and go all night?
Pizzas, Red Bulls, and beers, and then we go at it.
That actually sounds like a really fun time.
Yeah.
That is, by the way, a scene from The Social Network.
Yes.
So
yeah.
I'm just gonna go with I'm still right.
He's still creative.
He's still Mark Zuckerberg.
Are you the next capologist to get hired by an NHL team?
I don't think that's the end goal.
Does it? Well, I don't know if it's your end goal. Yeah. But what if a team calls you tomorrow and says,
"Here's $200,000, work for us"?
Yeah, I think that's probably unrealistic, for one, and for two, I don't think it'd be really hard to do that. I love the site. Like I said, it's my baby, and it would be really hard to jump into something completely different when I've made this such a lifestyle for myself, and it'd be hard to kind of let go of the site without really fulfilling what I think it can become. And it's a useful resource now, and I think a lot of people recognize that. But I think there's so much, and we have so much in our roadmap that people haven't really thought of and don't really know how useful the site could be, that I'm really excited to kind of build on.
So without revealing too much, because I know you won't, but where are you hoping to take this website?
Like I said, I hope it's as useful as CapGeek was. Like, I used that site almost every moment of every day. Like, I was on there looking at everything, and what Matthew did was he innovated and revolutionized how we pay attention to hockey, and I'm hopeful that we can do the same. A lot of the tools that we have now, probably with exemption of the expansion tool and the offer sheet eligibility tool, are tools that Matthew already had, and our hope is to build ones that he probably already had visions for, but that now we have visions for, and think that could be really, really useful, not only for fans but people in the industry as well.
What about advanced analytics?
Yeah, so with War on Ice going down, we've talked to a couple of the bigger sites that are already doing it. We've talked to the guy Manny Elk from Corsica, and we think there might be a chance to work with him. He's got plenty on his plate as it is, so maybe that's a conversation we have down the road. But I think maybe that's a way to do it, to form a partnership. But I'm also open to the idea of building our own sort of data scraper and building out an analytics end to our side. I think it's an important side of it, and I don't think anyone has quite yet tapped into how salary data and analytics data work together. And so that's a goal of ours, and if we beat someone else to it, sure. But I think I'm sure there's other people that are working on it already, and if there isn't, and you're listening to this, work on it. Like, if you want to get into hockey, try to do something no one else is doing, and trust me, you'll love it.
You will. With my videos, I keep saying to myself, there will be a day where I don't do them, and then I try to picture what that day's like, and I stop immediately because it makes me feel super uncomfortable. Is that like you on the website?
Yeah. Like, I don't know what I'd fill the day with. So, it wasn't that long ago that I didn't have the site, but now that I do, it's hard to imagine going back to without it.
How many trades or signings do you think there have been, or do you know of, that are a direct result of someone going to General Fanager and checking out how that trade would look?
As in, like, a GM looking at the page?
A GM, an assistant GM, someone going, hey, you know what? If I do this and that on this little fancy doohickey here, we can get this guy.
Well, the Frederick Andersen trade was obviously a direct correlation with our new expansion tool. Mm-hmm. No, not really. But
I was about to say, pardon?
Well, it's because of the expansion that the deal happened, right? So
yes,
but we know that GMs and assistant GMs and capologists, agents, all these guys are using the site. They have their own internal tools that do the same thing, but they're not as easily accessible. So if they're at a coffee shop with a player and they're talking to them and they need to pull up something, that they'll go to General Fanager, which is so odd to know and hear. The first time we heard that, we kind of took a step back and said, what the heck is going on here?
I know Don Sweeney with the Boston Bruins, I think, mentioned you.
Yeah, we got mentioned today by Tim Murray, on the weekend by Ken Holland. It's weird stuff to hear, but we know that they're using it, and I'm sure that some of them have used it right before a trade or something like that. I don't think it's a direct correlation, but it's nice to know that it's a useful enough resource that they're using it. And we know that players and their families are using it too. Like, it's pretty easy to see when a guy's coming up on his free agent year, he starts to follow General Fanager on Twitter, and we've had players' families email us contracts because we have a slight mistake on the contract details on our site, and they know
Holy
that
smokes.
the GMs are looking at it during free agency. So it's bizarre to hear, but we know it's happening.
And what a better source. Like, hey, that's wrong. Well, who's your source? Oh, it's you.
Well, the first time it happened, it was they sent me an issue with the contract, and the last name obviously matched. I think it was the father of the player, and we were like, okay, that's great. Can you provide some reference online, cite something that I can use? I can't really go on nothing. And they were like, how about if I fax you the contract? And I had no fax. I don't have a fax number. And I said,
ESPN does though.
so I quickly,
And Jesse now, too.
So I quickly signed up for an online faxing service and said, here's my fax number. And a few minutes later, I got a fax of the player's contract. And I was like, all right, I guess that's good enough.
Is your online fax number available to the public?
No.
Okay, just gonna say, how many butt pics have you got? I'm just saying. I know we're being super mature there for a second, so I needed to take it back down to our level.
Butts.
Now you have, like I said earlier, you have this unbelievable understanding of NHL teams financially. So the thing I want to know from you right now is the team that continues, despite the information out there available to them and the resources available to teams, and those are all considerable no matter what organization you're in, which team continues to dumbfound you with the moves that they make?
That's hard to say. To be honest with you, I've talked to a lot of these guys, and they are very intelligent people. You don't get into the jobs they're at without being really smart. They make mistakes. We all make mistakes, and you gamble on guys that you believe in. It doesn't work out. Like, it's easy to look at last year's cap and see a team like Vancouver, who is at $0 cap space at the end of the season, who is nowhere near the playoffs. A team like Toronto, which is a little bit of a different situation, but they're within 100,000 or so of the cap at the end of the season, and they're 30th in the league. And it's easy to point at those teams and say they don't know what they're doing. Toronto is a different situation because they willfully went to the cap to acquire resources. But I think Vancouver probably gambled on a team that they expected more from. And so I think that's kind of how they ended up there. There's other teams like Columbus that are in a tough situation, but they took on contracts that they believed in and didn't work out. So it's really easy to point the fingers, but I think that small mistakes add up in a cap system, and that's kind of what's happened with some of these teams.
How much time do we have left in the radio portion?
Probably about 10 minutes.
Okay.
Nope, 3.
3. So, okay, good. Tom, I would like you to get out there. And things that people always ask about. Okay. And now you can put them out there and they never have to ask you again.
Well, we get a lot about qualifying offers, which, if you watch the CBA Explained series, it's probably the best explanation. But basically, if a player is making less than $660,000 in his base salary in the last year, it's 110% for a qualifying offer. If it's between $660,000 and a mil, it's 105%. And then if it's over a mil, then it's 100% of the base salary. So that's out there. A lot of people have a misunderstanding about two-way contracts, thinking that means that the player, if it's on a two-way deal, they can be sent down without waivers.
Because that's how NHL 17 works.
Yeah.
Yes. It's not really.
And it's also because the wording on that is terrible. Like, you shouldn't call a two-way contract.
It's not a two-way contract if that's...
So a two-way contract, what it means by the CBA is that the NHL salary is different than the AHL salary. That's not what you would interpret two-way to mean, but that's what it means. Waivers is a completely different thing. A player is eligible for waivers based on pro experience and a couple other criteria. So if a player is waiver eligible, even if he has a one-way contract or a two-way contract, then he's going to have to clear waivers and vice versa. So that's out there. I don't know if there's LTIR, there's a lot of questions. I don't know if we have the time for that. But basically,
long-term injury reserve.
Yeah, long-term injury reserve. A lot of people just assume that if you have a player that's eligible for LTIR, then you can just erase their cap space. That's not the case. Their cap space continues to count, but if it allows you to basically go over by the amount that you are close to the cap. So if you're within $2 million of the cap and you've got a guy that makes $5 million, you can get $2 million of additional space by placing him on LTIR.
Woo! You get all that, everybody?
Yeah, so we'll continue this on sportsnet.ca or on iTunes or wherever you get a podcast.
SoundCloud.
We got more questions for Tom from General Fanager and this incredible website that he's created, and I'm just trying to catch all the LTIR stuff. We do want to talk to you about that though, because one of the teams that makes a lot of use of the LTIR, Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yep.
We'll talk about that on the download section of this at sportsnet.ca. So one of the things that, I do want to ask you, Tom, about the changes you'd make to the CBA, but because I think that answer is going to be most interesting, we're going to save it for last, at least before the press conference starts. The first thing we want to talk to you about is the thing that happened today, which is Vinny Lecavalier retiring.
Sure.
And you've got some interesting information on that.
Yeah, we tweeted out his career earnings. So obviously he's retiring now, which clears his cap hit off of both the LA and Philadelphia cap payrolls. I think that was known when he was traded, and there was some suspicion that maybe he'll go back on his promise, but I think everybody kind of believed that he would stick to it. So he's obviously off their books, but he continues to make over $1 million for pretty much, I think it's the next 13 years or something like that because of his massive compliance buyout with Tampa Bay. So we crunched the numbers.
2 teams ago.
Yeah. And we crunched the numbers a little bit on his career earnings. I think he was making $133 million or something over 29 years. And Steve, you had asked about whether he was the highest paid player ever in the NHL, and I think we had, when Yager signed his most recent deal, then we tweeted out that he made slightly more than that. So he's actually, I think, the highest paid player. And then our numbers don't even include what he made in the KHL, which is probably astronomical. So I think Lecavalier probably still pales in comparison to Yager.
What are we looking at here with Lecavalier? What are his total career earnings in the neighborhood of?
I think it's 133
million?
Yeah.
Wow.
Like, talk about a made man.
That's generational wealth. That's what it looks like. That's your grandkids will benefit from you.
So $133 million paid out over 29 years, starting in 98 to 2026.
And that kind of money
10 more years.
Makes money.
Yes.
You can literally leave that in a savings account. It'd be good.
Now, Vinny Lecavalier's agent is the person that probably loves that the most because he signed all those contracts, which is pretty sweet. Have you ever gone in and calculated the highest earning buyout players ever? And I think Vinny would be at the top of the list.
Yeah, I think it's hard to imagine anyone beating that Lecavalier deal just because it was like in the $10 million salary for several of those years. We haven't done that exercise. I'm sure we could if there's interested. But
wouldn't Brad Richards be up there too?
Yashin.
DiPietro is probably up there.
Oh.
Yeah. Yashin stopped getting paid by the Islanders like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That is really crazy. And didn't Lecavalier got bought out twice?
I think just the one.
Just the one. But it was a big one. Richards was bought out in New York, I believe.
I
Okay.
think he only had one as well.
Yeah.
And then he was Detroit, Chicago.
I'm trying to think of players who were bought out more than once. Can't be a long list.
No.
Grabowski
if it's happened at all.
Nathan Gerby once. I'm trying to think of all the compliance buyouts.
It's
pretty unbelievable.
That's an unbelievable amount of money. That's an unbelievable amount. Crazy.
That's one of those click hole questions. Like it's like it'd be a dumb feature to have on the site, but everyone would use it.
You wouldn't believe how much money Vincent Lecavalier.
When I found out my jaw dropped.
I have goosebumps.
When the alligator dragged the kid into the water, you won't believe what he did next.
You won't believe what contract that alligator signed Vincent Lecavalier to.
That Lou Lamoriello somehow bought out without any penalties.
Yeah, and he gets a first-round pick.
The UFA goalie market is interesting this year because First off, Justin Fisher, who will be on, I believe, our next show, was tweeting about this, and it's James Reimer. When the Andersen trade went through, Justin Fisher was tweeting. He's a friend of the show, and he said, "If you are still talking about James Reimer coming to Toronto, stop." And then he kept posting out gifs of people saying, "Stop doing that." James is in a rough situation.
Yeah, it's unfortunate for James. You look at the timing of the expansion news, and it only hurts him and a couple of the other goalies on the market. Obviously, Cam Ward kind of lucked out and signed early with Carolina, but James Reimer, who's been working to try to become a number one goalie for as long as he has, and finally is unrestricted free agent eligible.
And is probably the best unrestricted goalie on the market.
Yeah, and he goes into the market that also has trade eligible players like Bishop, Howard,
Fleury,
Bernier.
Andersen just got dealt. And at the same time, how many teams really need a goalie? It might just be Calgary now. So,
who apparently have been after Semyon Varlamov. If the rumors are to be believed.
So I heard Varlamov. Well, now I'm hearing Varlamov. Bishop was a new one. Fleury was in the mix. Poor James is going to have to sign as a backup somewhere, isn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Or a 1B or something like that. It's a tough time to become a free agent on the goalie.
Well, it may be in his case he just signs a 1-year deal.
You know what would be a pretty good situation to be a 1B? Anaheim. Oh, Randy.
That's a really good point.
Dude, such a great situation. Fuck, Randy.
How do you feel about coming to Anaheim, James? It's just okay.
Just okay.
So
John gets, that would be a great combination.
It really would. It would be really great.
Shit, Randy.
And he's also the best teammate ever.
And Randy.
So can Reimer be the starting goalie for Las Vegas? Is that where he's headed?
Only really if he signs a deal that is 2 years long, and then he'd be exposed in the draft. Otherwise, if he signs a 1-year deal, it makes a lot of sense for him because then he can become a free agent and try to sign with the Las Vegas team next summer.
You talk about the perfect candidate to be a player for the Las Vegas team.
Yeah, literally the player you're least worried about in the league of getting in trouble. But you know what?
The one night he goes to a casino, they're like, "Hey, can I get you anything? Can I have a glass of milk?"
Sure would like a cookie.
Sure. Don't tell Coach.
James has infinite patience, but I would not blame him for having a wild weekend out in Vegas based on how much patience he's had to have his entire career and the numbers that he has. And it's a tough situation for him to be in. Where do you see him going? Do you see Calgary being that team? Because they don't even seem set. Because he's an easy pick. Like you get James, you get him for what, $3 million?
Yeah, probably. If you get him on a 1-year deal, yeah, maybe you get him for $3 million, maybe $4. But he'll probably take a discount just to get that opportunity to prove himself as a number one. I really don't know where he's going to go. I don't think it's Calgary based on what we're hearing. It's obviously mostly speculation probably, but if Calgary's looking for a goalie via trade, then they're probably trying to capitalize on that expansion draft and bring in someone that they think is a more long-term solution. And so that spells that Reimer is probably going somewhere as a 1B.
What does the Hutchison deal do for Winnipeg as a possibility? Because they still have Pavelec, do they not?
They do, who I think is a RFA.
Still? Here, I'm on your site right now.
Yeah,
so
if you could.
Yeah, I'm bringing that up.
Jesse.
I'm on my phone, so no. Okay, here we go.
He signed a pretty economical deal. I think it was $1.15 million.
It is. Yeah, I have it right here.
Pavelec is a UFA.
He's got one more season, though, right?
Yes, because your website updated so that when it says the number, it's actually for next year now.
So yeah, we've got him. Okay, yeah. So he's got 1 year left. So that means that they're probably not bringing a goalie in unless they can trade Pavelec out, which I don't see happening. So
now a situation I wanted to look at. So Jakob Markstrom makes... no, they got 2 goalies. I was going to say Vancouver could be a decent fit because Ryan Miller's coming up on the end of his contract. So is Jakob Markstrom, but they both got a year left.
If Edmonton's defense wasn't the worst defense I've ever seen, Besides, I would say Edmonton.
I was about to say Edmonton, and he could be a tandem goalie with Cam Talbot.
They seem to be pretty sold on Talbot, though.
But they seem to be pretty sold on Talbot.
And I don't blame them.
James Reimer's boned.
Yeah.
He's boned. And it's the saddest thing. Like, over the last couple days, I've come to the realization there's nowhere to go.
I got it. Okay, so Calgary makes the deal for Bishop, right?
Sure.
Okay.
I don't think that's going to happen, but
okay,
sure.
Or somebody does.
Mm-hmm.
Then Tampa Bay's the spot. And it brings us to the next topic of discussion because Tampa Bay has a bunch of RFAs going into this year.
The one thing I'd say for that, though, is it's contingent on that Bishop trade happening before Reimer signs. So if that Bishop trade doesn't happen until August or September and Reimer's waiting around that long, that's a tough place to be sitting.
So unfair, man. Because a Reimer-Vasilevsky pairing
That'd be pretty nice.
would be pretty nice. And pretty affordable. Pretty damn affordable.
Yeah.
But maybe he comes back to San Jose and
There's
Why
another
wouldn't
option
you?
as the backup.
Why wouldn't you?
And see, he'd be the backup, but like, I think it'd be like a 65, 35,
This is the
60,
thing.
40.
Backups are playing a lot of games. They're playing a lot of games. And it's not like what used to be with
You need two goalies.
whoever backed up Marty Brodeur, where he's playing 70 games and you're going to sit there and pick your nose. Like you were playing 25, 30, 35 games. That's still pretty good.
I feel so bad.
So let's talk about Tampa Bay.
yeah, so like you look at Tampa Bay and you can just smell the trouble there. Like they obviously want to sign Stamkos, like who wouldn't? But Nikita Kucherov is a big problem, I think. I mean, he's going into this offseason with numbers that are similar to a guy like Philip Forsberg, who is also due for a massive contract, and a guy like Brandon Saad, who signed last year for $6 million a year. So if you're using those as comparables, and Kucherov's going to make $6 million a year, that's a massive add there. And then they've got a ton of other RFAs: Killorn, Brown, Nemestikov, Paquette, Nesterov, Gudlevskis. Like, that's a tough situation in a year that you have Steven Stamkos as an unrestricted free agent. So,
God.
yeah, it's a tough
And
situation.
Victor Hedman next year.
Yeah. So, I mean, you can alleviate some of that if you're able to trade Bishop, but I think if they can make Stamkos work, they're working some magic.
Let me throw another name out there for Reimer. Buffalo.
Well, that's a good one. Yeah, I can see that.
Buffalo. One more year of Robin Lehner, one more year of Linus Ullmark, and that is it.
I'm surprised Buffalo actually hasn't been more active on the goaltending market.
Well,
They seem to be sold on Laner, though.
You think so?
Yeah.
good.
Like they had
I
big
hope,
wishes
they
for-
continue down that road.
Good.
I'm okay with that. RFAs. You mentioned Tampa has a lot of them. There are some teams with some cap.
Yeah, so I think, well, the one thing with the RFAs that Tampa has is the concept's not new, but it's interesting with Tampa Bay. I wonder if there's a team that attacks them with a double offer sheet. And so if you haven't thought about the concept, or heard about the concept, it's basically submitting two offer sheets on a single team's two players. One that would be for, let's say, a third round pick in terms of compensation, so somewhere in the $1 to $3 million range. And then another that's in the $5-point-something million range that would cost you a first. So the first one actually would cost you a second round pick, and the second one would cost you a first and a third. So the team is probably going to match one of those. So the other one is going to be tricky. They're probably going to have to pick between one of the two to match. And there's been a lot of guys who have written about this sort of scenario, but it really seems like Tampa Bay could be taken for that sort of situation this year.
Why wouldn't you offer, say there's two guys, say you got Kucherov and somebody else who deserves the same amount of money as Kucherov.
Right.
Okay, ex-player. I don't know who that would be. I don't even know if one of their RFAs is worth the same amount as Kucherov. But let's say Kucherov and Philip Forsberg, since you mentioned him, are on the same team and they're both up. Is there any scenario in which you offer both of them the same amount?
Well, you wouldn't be able to because you need to have your own picks.
You do need to have the compensation available.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's the idea in terms of offering two different brackets of compensation, so that it would be a third round pick, or first and a third for one, and then a second for the other. So both offers are valid, and you put that team in a position where they need to pick one guy because they can't afford to go with both.
Or you just take 3 picks and you say, hey, I'm good with this.
It's possible, but if you're offering Kucherov a $5-point-something million deal and they decide not to match it, I'll take Kucherov for a first and a third, sure.
Remind me, do the Leafs have all their picks?
They don't currently. So they don't have their third for next year. That's the one that's going to, I think, New Jersey for Lamoriello.
I think it's Detroit.
Detroit first.
Because they got Babcock before they got Lou.
Okay.
And it has to be the team's own third. It cannot be another team's pick, right?
For the offer sheet, correct. It has to be your own pick.
Which is weird. That's a weird thing.
But there is some talk about what they might do is ask one of those teams, either Detroit or, well, in this case it would be Detroit, hey, we'll give you a third round this year if you give us back our first round or third round pick next year, so that they can open up their options for offer sheets. And the other thing that has been talked about, and it's not official yet, is that the NHL is potentially extending what draft picks you have to compensate with and extending one more year in that 3-year window. So the Leafs may not have to give up a pick next year, and they might have to give up their 2018 and 19 picks.
No doubt that Lou Lamoriello might be behind that movement.
Hold on to your butts.
I hope that happens.
Wow.
It actually stems from a Players Association appeal, because they were concerned that that offer sheets this year are less likely because of the picks that are being given up in compensation. So as a compromise, I think the NHL is now planning to defer them by one more year.
What would be the reasoning if I am New Jersey and I've got Winnipeg's first pick and I've got my own third pick? Why couldn't I make an offer sheet? If I have the picks, why can't I offer sheet somebody?
I think it's to simplify the situation for the most part, but it also ensures that whatever picks you're giving up are your true pick and whatever situation you're going to be in. So if you're going to be a bad team, the picks you should be giving up are good ones in order to get that player, and not because I've acquired the Stanley Cup winner's first round pick, I shouldn't be able to give that one up instead of my own.
Right.
Let's say though, let's say the Leafs 2 years from now finish better than the Sharks. Let's just say. I think the Leafs have the Sharks 2018 second and 2018 third. I might be wrong on that, but let's say that's the case.
You are correct.
Oh, okay. Wouldn't you prefer those picks ahead of the Leafs picks? They're better.
Correct, but there's no way of knowing that at the time you would sign an offer sheet, right?
That is true. But could a team not come to some sort of agreement, like, we have to go to arbitration if this is not the case, but if it ends up being the case that the Sharks picks are better, we get them.
And that's where I get the simplification of the process, right?
Yeah.
Because the NHL is already extraordinarily complicated. So
and
then
by the way,
to go to arbitration, that's expensive.
I think a big reason. Oh, sorry, no, go ahead.
I think part of the reason is that I don't think GMs like offer sheets, and so making them more difficult by forcing you to have your own pick is part of why it is the way it is.
This is why I love the NBA, because they don't care. They'll just offer sheet anyone. They don't care. It happens all the time.
I have the details of this mixed up. Maybe you know them a little better. There's precedence for there being utter and complete chaos when not all the picks are in order, and that would be the Scott Stevens saga. Do you recall what I'm talking about?
No, I don't.
So I believe the Blues offer sheeted him away from the Washington Capitals, and as a result, they had to give up all these picks.
Right.
Or no, I think it was they had a huge offer sheet for Brendan Shanahan, I want to say, and then they did the same thing the next year with
Scott
Stevens, and then the Devils were like, "Well, pay up," and they're like, "Well, we don't have the picks."
Yeah.
Okay, well, we think adequate compensation is Brendan Shanahan. No, frig off. You can't have Brendan Shanahan. We just got him. And Lou just stuck to his guns and said, "You're giving us Brendan fucking Shanahan." And that's exactly who they got. Or no, we're getting Scott Stevens. I screwed the whole story up.
Do you want me to tell you here?
Yes, please. Thank you. My God. As I backstroke and drown.
So the Blues offered signed defenseman Scott Stevens to an offer sheet. They had to give up 5 first-round picks.
Good. Whoa. Holy Lord.
Wow. One of the picks, Gonchar, Brendan Witt. So Sergei Gonchar is the best player out of those 5 picks, to be fair. The next season...
It's pretty good, though.
They decided to tender an offer sheet to Scott Stevens. This time for Brendan Shanahan, sorry.
So the Blues went after Shanahan?
So then they went after Shanahan again.
So back-to-back years, they're like, this works.
But they also had to give up the very same player they signed to an offer sheet the offseason before, Scott Stevens. So since the Blues had already given up their next 5 first rounds in the Stevens deal, both clubs had to work out a compensation deal. The Blues offered netminder Curtis Joseph and Rod Brind'Amour, who were both rookies at the time. The Devils, however, requested Stevens. The arbitrator took the side of the New Jersey Devils, and they got Stevens back.
And the story goes, as I remember, Lou basically just kept going, Stevens.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we'll give Stevens.
Joseph and Brind'Amour.
Because the Blues...
Stevens.
Still, Joseph and Brind'Amour would have been good, but not like Scott Stevens.
The Blues didn't have a leg to stand on.
Didn't have the
They
picks.
offered an offer sheet without the proper assets.
Wow.
So that would not work anymore. So the way that offer
It's more
sheets
the
now
Wild
work-
West in the 90s, right?
Yeah.
90s rules.
Can you imagine this site in the 90s?
Oh my God.
They should have a 90s rules like video game filter for NHL 18 or 17.
Wasn't that NHL Hits?
Yeah, I guess so. 90s
This
play.
was in 90-91.
Wow. So sorry, you were going to say.
So the way offer sheets work now is that you have to fill out an offer sheet form, which is the most basic rudimentary form you'll ever see. If you want to look at it, it's in the CBA in one of the appendices. But basically, it's like fill in blanks here, and it's a one-pager that you just hand in. But essentially, you give that to the central registry after it's been signed by all the parties involved. And then the central registry actually, as their first step, I believe, checks if you have the picks available. And if you don't, they immediately say, nope, try again. And so it doesn't even get to anywhere beyond that. So,
Wow.
And by the way, the player has to agree to the deal, right?
yes.
So it is entirely possible for a team to be like, we'll give you the sun and the moon, and the player can go, no, I really like it here.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, that's good.
I don't know if that's ever happened, ever, but it could.
Wondering, too, do you have, just off the top of your head, and I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot here, Tom, but do you know who the best RFA defensemen are this year?
Well, there's obviously Seth Jones, and that one's an interesting one because in Columbus, they don't have a ton of cap space. I think they have 5 million, maybe 3.3 is what I have. So good luck fitting Jones under that unless you get him on a bridge deal. So he's primed for picking too. Like if a team comes around and says, hey, you're trying to find your way through a bridge deal, how about we just give you 5 years at whatever and see if Columbus can match that. So and Columbus is in a tough spot. So I think that's probably the one that people would be targeting if they were looking at it.
Now, the Leafs need a young, great defenseman.
Particularly right-handed.
Particularly right-handed. What are you giving up if you sign, let's say it's the exact same money as Frederick Andersen. Let's say it's 5 over 5.
So that is a first and a third round pick.
That's it. I would do that for Seth Jones.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
What about Tyson Barrie?
So he's another RFA. It really depends on what you give him. If you're looking same amount of money, then you're looking at a first and a third.
That's really not that bad.
But keep in mind, they don't currently have their third. So unless they can defer it or reacquire it, they can't do that.
And this is so frustrating because the Leafs are like, there were only, I think, about a dozen picks given up for coaches and executives. And then they got rid of the stupid rule. They scrapped it altogether.
Yeah.
But they have to pay for it. And I know I'm saying that as a Leaf fan, but I'm
still
totally
stupid.
biased.
It's still extremely stupid.
The Oilers they have to give up a second for Peter Chiarelli
and for McClellan.
The Canucks have to give up a second for Tortorella.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good
And
time
like-
to be a Canucks fan.
Oh, I'll jump to the Canucks fans right away. That's preposterous. That's so
ridiculous.
stupid that you have to do that. I mean, you knew the rules.
When
but
they got rid of the deal, I think they probably should have just got rid of the compensation too.
they tried a thing. The NHL tried a couple things that seemed like good ideas this year that ended up being terrible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it was just execution on the rules. Like, why allow fired personnel to still require a compensation pick? Just make it so that only personnel that's still working for the team requires a pick.
Right?
It seems pretty straightforward to me.
Well,
Right.
guys, it's the NHL. So
What is one of the most baffling things about the CBA for you?
I think that was probably the one. The fact that you need to compensate for a fired coach or GM. So it's nice that that's out. I think I probably would have still kept some sort of personnel.
the Leafs
compensation.
almost got a pick out of Randy. Had Randy been hired in January or whatever it was,
More like Randy-wary.
Randy, there would have been a third round pick coming to Toronto, correct?
Might have been part of the reason why he wasn't. Because I was told, I don't know, but supposedly the Ducks are poking around in the fall, and I wonder if they go, you know what, we might get out of this. We're starting to get out of this slump already. If we want, we can revisit this in the offseason, and we won't have to give up a pick.
And it was forecasted that rule would go away on January 1st. Like Bettman had said that they would give it a year, see how it worked, and it obviously wasn't working, and then they'd reevaluate. And then I think even in August or September, he said that it would go away as of January 1st. So teams in the fall that needed a new coach would have made sense to wait until January to hire one if you were thinking about someone that would require.
Wow.
Lou's going to get that pick back. He'll find a way.
You don't think Steven Stamkos is coming to Toronto, Tom?
I'm not really sold on the idea. I think maybe if they hadn't won the lottery, they would have made a harder play for him. But I think now the Andersen deal kind of is the writing on the wall. A lot of people suggest that, hey, you've got so many guys that could go on LTIR and you could make it work. Sure, you could, but then think about the guys that you have coming in on entry-level deals that require bonuses. So Marner's got some fat bonuses. So does Nylander.
Some fat stacks.
That's right.
From Martin's barn.
Yeah, just to cut you off there, Marner, I think, makes like $925.
Yeah, so he makes the max base salary, which is $925.
Which is not much, but after bonuses, isn't it like over $3 million?
Yeah, so I think his jumps to 3.775. So
Jesus!
So what you're talking
is that a cap hit?
Oh,
that's the AAV. So technically how it works is, so throughout the season, you are only charged their base cap hits. So in Marner's case, $925. But if he hits his bonuses, which actually happened at least with Riley last year, and it causes you to go over the cap, then that is carried over as an overage. So think about if they sign Stamkos, get over the cap, but use LTIR space to make it work, but then Marner hits $2 million in bonuses.
Matthews hits two.
Nylander hits a bunch. Zaitsev hits some. Then you're looking
Sosh
at
even.
Yeah. Then you're looking at $5-6 million in overages the next year, which would be the most by any team ever. And that handcuffs you in a year that you're probably going to be much better. So I think the Leafs are I think they're done with overages. I think they're done using LTIR unless they have to. I think they'll probably place a guy on LTIR just in case they want to make a move. But I think they actually didn't end up with zero cap space last year, but Riley put them over, and I don't think they want an overage again because I don't think they want to be handcuffed in a year that they're getting better and want to be in a position to.
How much were they over?
They were over by just under 500,000 based on our
So it'll
numbers.
cost them about $500,000 this year?
Yeah, so there's an overage going into this year. We estimate it at 498,000 or something like that, and we're still waiting on the official number, but that's what they're looking at.
Breaking, the NHL has set the salary cap for $73 million.
Oh, boy, I was so worried this would happen while you were here. Well, it was great having you on the show, Tom. We really appreciate it.
And the floor is $54 million. So there you go.
So it's about what it was.
Yeah, $1.6 million over what it was.
So what happens now? You find out that news. You are general manager. What do you got to do now?
So I pull out my laptop, update the salary upper limit and the lower limit, and then update all. Just run a quick script to update all the teams, and away we go.
So what you're saying is you got to get the hell out of here? Or
If you want to do that right now, I will block the camera so they can't see any of the login.
all right.
Go right
I think
ahead.
we can wait a little bit.
Yeah?
All right.
I don't think we can.
What are there any loopholes that have not been exploited yet that you know about the CBA that you're surprised the teams haven't taken advantage of?
The double offer
yeah,
sheet was one I'd never thought of.
Cool.
So, and that's not an original idea to me. Other guys have written about it, but it's an interesting one. And I think the biggest hurdle with that one is you're risking some picks. But if you're a team that's going to be better in a couple of years and you're going to have your own RFAs coming up, and you offered that team a double offer sheet, they're probably coming back at you and screwing you over. So I think a GM is probably unlikely to take that risk and put himself in that sort of hole. But yeah, the Jared Cowen one was an interesting one. We had that before the Leafs made the trade for him. And we posted kind of an explanation of why it works the way it does. He's not the only one with a buyout credit. I think we posted a list a couple weeks ago on Twitter. I think there's about 12 guys, but he's the one that makes the most sense. And basically the way the buyout credit works, for those that are wondering, and we get that question a lot, is if you backload a deal, so the salary goes up as the contract progresses in years, and you backload it to an amount that causes the last year of the salary to be much higher than the total cap hit, then you're going to end up with a credit. So a guy like Ryan Johansson, if he was bought out this year, would have, I think, $1 million credit, but obviously you're not buying out Ryan Johansson.
So that kind of saves the Leafs on their overage, right?
Yeah, so that essentially nullifies the overage. And I think a lot of the thinking was when they acquired Jared Cowen, that cap hit was obviously there, and they obviously weren't playing him. So the thought was that, hey, they're going to flip him to a team that needs that cap space, someone like Chicago, and get some assets for it. But I think the Leafs were already planning that, hey, we might go over. Let's have this in our back pocket in case we need it.
So I guess it hasn't gone through. Has he officially been bought out yet?
It hasn't become official, but I suspect it's done. We've already updated on the site because it doesn't really make sense to hold off.
Right. So with the update, they're still over.
So they were over on last year's cap. This year, going into this year, they still have some cap space. They have they have, I think, around $7 million right now.
So no overage.
They are carrying an overage from last year, which counts as $500,000 against the cap.
But because of Jared Cowen's credit, it kind of nullifies it.
Yeah.
By
$100,000.
I think I get it.
Yeah. So they're 500 over, but because of the Jared Cowen credit, which is $650.
Yes, minus $650.
So then they have $150,000 there to really, because it just kind of nullifies it.
Here's a question. So he was put on waivers. What was stopping a team from claiming him off waivers, buying them out themselves, and taking the credit?
We had that theory as well, and we were still trying to dig in on it. We thought the Leafs would wait till the last day they could to place Cowen on waivers and then prevent a team from doing that, but they obviously didn't wait very long. So my presumption is that maybe the player needs to be on the team's roster as of the most recent trade deadline to be able to be buyout eligible. There is specific language in the CBA that says that for the second buyout window. It doesn't say that specifically for the first buyout window. Wow. So we were skeptical and thought he still could be picked up, but it looks to me that he couldn't have been picked up by another team. And the other thinking that would support that is that as soon as the trade deadline passed, Lou Lamoriello came out and said, we're buying out Cowen. So that suggested that, hey, now that they haven't been able to trade him or didn't find a suitable partner to trade him to, now they're announcing that they're going to buy him out because no one else is eligible to.
Interesting.
And by the way, remember all those times we made fun of Jim Benning for missing stuff? Listen to how thick this is.
Yeah.
My God.
How could you not? All right.
Did you hear about all that, by the way? Emails being sent by the way, you can't do this. Here's how this works.
Well, it's funny because we've heard stories about... So there's essentially this NHL hotline that GMs and personnel can use to call about cap issues. And it's some guy who obviously knows the cap very well. I'm sure it's multiple guys. And you just call them up and give them a scenario and say, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. Can I do that? And they'll give you a reason why you can't, or they might take it.
God, if I'm a reporter, I want to get next to those guys.
That one guy's sitting there, no, Jim, you can't do that.
Yeah, Jim. All right.
What about Sidney No, Jim. Jim! I'm hanging up the phone, Jim.
What do you think, before we get to the loopholes, what do you think about this whole rumor today about Chicago kicking the tires on Evgeny Malkin?
I mean, that would take some creative maneuvering, and you would think that the only way that works is if they send back one of their big defensemen who also has a no move.
Brent Seabrook.
And maybe that makes sense for Pittsburgh. Maybe they feel the need for a defenseman. I don't know why you would feel a need for anything when you just...
Why do you trade him? I don't get why you trade him. And then if you're Chicago, you have $30 million essentially locked up in 3 guys.
Riddle me this then. Who currently is over the cap?
So Pittsburgh is the only team we currently have over the cap. And I think that's with the 22-man roster. But they can get back under just by placing Dupuis on LTIR.
Oh, so he still has contract left?
Yes. So he didn't officially retire. I'm doing magic quotes with my fingers. Yeah. He didn't officially retire. He stopped playing hockey, I think it was the term in his press release, because if he did retire, they would have a cap penalty as a result of it.
So he's trying to save him from that.
Yeah.
And he gets his name on the cup. That would be my thing. If you win the cup and I'm going to not retire,
well, and that whole
put my damn name on the cup.
That whole money thing.
Yeah, there's
if you retire, they don't have to give you money.
Oh. Yeah. Oh, in that case, yeah, definitely not going to retire. What would you change about the CBA? Let's say they opt out in 2018, I think it is.
Well, I'm just starting to figure it out, so probably nothing.
Fair enough. Would you stay with a hard cap system?
I think I would. Like you see the luxury tax in other leagues. I like the fact that guys have to get really creative. I like the fact that there's always some sort of other motivation in a move. I think the luxury tax takes that away a fair bit. But I'm a cap guy. I think it's a lot of fun to see the league and GM squirm and try to figure out ways to make it work. And I like the fact that really good teams have to lose really good players because they're too close to the cap and guys get paid. So I wouldn't change that. I think if anything, a couple of things I might change would be like the offer sheets. We've talked about them already, but I'd probably make the compensation less or something. Like the league is has shifted so much to young players being good, but those players don't get paid until they're unrestricted free agents and out of their prime. So they get paid essentially for years they've played in the past. So why not open up the offer sheet system and give them more of an opportunity to make money earlier? So I think that's something I would change. I think entry-level slides are also kind of a funny one. I don't really think it makes a lot of sense. Like if a guy's ready and you're not playing him because his contract's going to start, it's a silly thing to do. Obviously, the Leafs kind of went against that this year with Nylander, and we had talked about a few reasons why they did that. So I think I would probably lose entry-level slides too.
And you mentioned the Leafs actually have a few guys who they could either have play on the Marlies or slide, which is a bit of a rare situation, I think, right?
Yeah, I think so. In most cases, if a guy's slide eligible, then he has to play in junior.
Can you explain what that is for people that maybe don't know exactly?
Sure. So slide eligible, basically if you're 18 or 19 years old and on your entry-level deal, that first or second year of your contract can what they call slide, which means the money you're owed in terms of NHL salary goes to the following year. And essentially your contract now can become a 5-year contract instead of a 3-year contract if it slides twice. It also has the impact of reducing your total cap hit, and it extends the amount of time that you're on your entry-level deal. So a lot of GMs won't play that player more than 9 games because they want to have that player for longer on his entry-level affordable deal and not get him to his bridge deal yet.
And the Leafs have a few guys. I think Andrew Nielsen is one who was a prolific scoring defenseman in the WHL this past season. He could slide or go to the Marlies.
I think that's the case, yeah.
Dmytro Timashov, World Junior Superstar.
I can't remember the specifics, but...
That's in our DMs.
I'll pretend like you have.
I'll tweet the screenshot.
All right, so let's get to the press conference because I know there's a lot of people with a lot of questions.
The Presser. SDP. The Steve Dangle press
I'm going to read a
conference.
tweet from Cap Friendly because General Fanager is too busy talking to us idiots. The Arizona Coyotes are currently... They spelled R with just the letter R. What a bunch of idiots, right? Like, who would ever go to that site, right? I'm sorry. The Arizona Coyotes are currently the team furthest from the newly announced $54 million cap floor with a projected cap of $34,438,491. Under the floor, they are $19,561,509.
Pavel Datsyuk is going to be an Arizona Coyote.
Datsyuk doesn't touch it.
I know.
He doesn't even start to solve their problems. Oh my God.
Just for the record, the guys from Cap Friendly are not idiots.
I know.
They're saints. They're really good guys.
No, they're nice to me.
So Adam,
And you.
Lobby Dangle.
Oh,
wants to
Jesus. For me? I thought these were for...
know. Well, you tease the world with some
I was gonna ask
amazing
about this.
salary cap idea. And
yeah.
Lobby Dangle says,
Well, it's-
since General Fanager is here, this is the perfect time to tell us what the hell this thing is.
Well, and the reason I keep teasing it is because I have had no time to actually sit down, write it out, and properly kind of flesh it out. But since you are here, I'll give you the basic premise.
This
which
sounds
is-
a lot like the jump to conclusions game from Office Space.
I'm
I'm
ready
just
for the
letting you
jump
know.
to
Do you want to save it?
Well, what the hell? Let's just
No,
go
you
with
got
it.
time. You
It's
got
not.
time.
Yeah, it's not
Okay.
fully fleshed out. But here's the deal. Okay. My understanding of capitalism is that the more money that flows, the better it is for some parts in capitalism. The better it is, right? So if the NHL were to graduate to a intense luxury cap system, so you've got a cap. Let's say it's $73 million this year. But let's say if you want to spend $80 million, you've got to pay an enormous luxury tax. That money goes then to equalization payments. Is that not better for the league? Because a team like Toronto, team like New York, team like maybe Detroit on a good year,
Probably Philadelphia.
Those teams, the more money those teams spend that goes back into the league, does that not make a healthier league?
So you're the NBA.
Yes, but the NBA's hard cap is ridiculous, and baseball doesn't have a hard cap. It just has a luxury tax.
No, I know. Yeah.
No, there's no even luxury tax. No cap.
There's no luxury tax in baseball. I'm pretty sure there is. I'm pretty sure there's luxury tax in baseball.
Because I seem to remember, like, when the Yankees played the Marlins in the World Series, the Yankees were paying like more of the Marlins' salary than the Marlins were.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So and I know that you just said that you love to see GM squirm, but I feel like for a healthy league, you want to increase those equalization payments. You want those to go up as a business, and you want your big teams. A team like Toronto could spend, if there were no cap, $100 million
In their sleep. With no regret.
So why not let them? Why not let them? Why not give them just that little bit more? And yes, is it an unfair competitive advantage? Sure. But if I'm Arizona and that takes care of my financial bottom line and that keeps ownership situations steadied, that's better for the league, is it not?
I think it has merit. The issue I see with it is that a team, let's say Toronto, for example, can spend to whatever they want, and then that gets distributed among several teams. And that Arizona is probably never going to compete with that Toronto for a free agent. They're probably never going to attract the type of talent that Toronto does. Mm-hmm. And even though now you're helping their bottom line, probably less people are going to their games because they can't attract any talent. So now they're making less, even though you're compensating for it. So I think...
Well, what if it was a... by the way, I see nothing wrong with that, by the way. No competition for Toronto. I'm good with it. No, but what if it's not an obscene amount of money? Let's say it's $7 million up.
So you could exceed by a certain amount.
By a certain amount, because you do have a hard cap. It's just there's a luxury tax territory. So you're taxing teams for spending to the actual hard cap. And it's not an obscene amount of money more. It's a percentage. Let's say you could spend 3% above or 3% of the cap above if you want to make it about percentages. In my way of thinking, give them an extra $5 million to spend.
Yeah,
you could still be competitive.
Yeah, it goes against the whole thought of why the NHL brought in the cap system, and that's parity. And I think that's something they see value in. I think the ratings sometimes suffer as a result, but
isn't that what it's about?
I don't know. I think when you've got hockey in so many non-traditional markets, I think you need to sell it in those markets as a sport that any team can win in, and not just the big heavyweights. And so I think that's how the NHL is trying to market it and sell it. So,
And there's also the issue of inflation. So the Leafs can go over. Kyle Okposo is a free agent. They could offer him $9 million. There's no planet where Kyle Okposo is worth $9 million, but you get him because you know no one else can afford him. Now, next year, a free agent comes about on the New Jersey Devils, or the who gives a crap, Nashville, we'll say. And their numbers are identical. Games played, goals, assists, points, advanced stats, whatever. They are essentially Kyle Okposo on paper. And they go, I want $9 million. Because the new price set for a Kyle Okposo type player is $9 million. So the Leafs shaft teams on the ice by being able to afford players they can't. And now they also price out all kinds of players in the future.
And I hear that. I understand that. You want to sell a league, though, to sponsors, to broadcasters who pay for your television rights.
Yeah, a league.
They need ratings. And the ratings, I'm sorry, are just not acceptable. On either side of the border. So do you have a team? And I'm not suggesting that Toronto and New York become like the New York Yankees of baseball, because baseball is embarrassing. Like, it really is. The amount of it's just stupid money.
What's embarrassing is how bad the Yankees are.
Yeah, they have no excuse. They really don't.
Yeah.
And they've actually pulled back recently. They don't spend like they used to spend, like willy-nilly crazy money. But I feel like if you give, because it's just a thing in life. Life isn't fair. Why are we trying to make this thing fair? Why aren't we just trying to force teams? I mean, do we not just have Leicester win over in England in the Premier League? Right? Leicester City just won.
But what were someone made like a $20 bet before the season began and is now a millionaire.
Yes.
Because of the odds of that.
But the point is, would that not also force general managers in smaller market teams to get more creative?
I'd say they got to get pretty damn creative under the current system.
Okay. I don't think that teams like Carolina or Arizona or teams that are financially struggling, I guess Arizona's okay now. We keep bringing them up. They've struggled in the past. I don't think they struggle as much.
Your heart is in the right place with this.
And I think that the ratings, and the point of it is to grow the ratings. The point of it is to grow faces watching it.
I think
not cancel watch parties outdoors.
I think this works in a 20-team league. You know what I mean? Too many teams would just die. Yeah. They would just go away. You know what I mean? I don't want to poop on your idea, Adam. Yeah. I see your face of disappointment.
I didn't expect you guys to agree. But financially, business-wise, I think this makes the most sense.
But there might be too many markets where if you don't win, nobody shows up to the games. And if nobody shows up to the games, your franchise is going to fold. So you can't...
Well, that's a free market economy.
Well, you don't want to make a league where that's a possibility, where you're creating a system where you're handicapping.
So
teams.
You reduce the excitement of trades, you reduce the excitement of free agency, and you have teams that and you lack the stories going into that's the thing. The NBA's got, and I choose them as the example because I really enjoy their system. I like their system a lot. Going into it, the NBA has great stories going around trades and free agency and that sort of thing because they've got the rules set up that way, where it's people are able to flexibly move under the cap. They're able to get deals done for superstars. A guy like LeBron James changes teams and then goes back. You can trade a Carmelo Anthony contract. You can do that. In the NHL, you can't do that.
But the revenue the NBA generates compared to the NHL is not even comparable.
Agreed.
The NBA
why is
so
that?
Much bigger franchise.
But why is that? We have to look at
people like basketball more.
Yeah, more people in America enjoy the game of
Tom,
basketball.
why is Adam stupid? Let's get to this here.
I just think you have to create your monster teams. You can't hold back your monster markets. You cannot hold on. You can't kill a strength to address a weakness, and that goes in anything in life.
I think the Blackhawks won 3 cups in 6 years. Like they're that monster team. Mm-hmm. They played hopscotch leapfrog.
Are you guys
actually
going to hold tight to a tight cap?
Well,
I don't love it.
In the last 10 years, has there been more than a handful of teams to win the Stanley Cup?
No.
The reality is it would simply kill like 10 teams overnight.
Yeah.
Over $5 million? That's all I'm saying. $5 million extra dollars.
Your meany little idea could work.
I'm not talking huge. I'm not talking NBA.
Butterfly effect to handicapping these teams.
We're already guaranteed a lockout, Adam. What are you doing?
I'm proposing an idea where the NHL makes more money.
Hey, let me...
and it can market itself more.
Let me completely change direction here. Do you have a plan for if there's a lockout? Because I'm not sure we do.
Yeah, I don't know what the hell we'll do.
Yeah, I don't know. Might pick up the NWHL, start the women's
cap. Maybe the KHL, where there is no cap.
Yeah, I don't know about the KHL. That could be, having those conversations with some of those people would probably be a little bit challenging.
Well, and you don't want to do the rubles conversion?
No.
Okay, fine. It would change every day.
And just the stories of how people are paid.
Yeah.
Like Steve Dangle.
The Scott Gomez one is good. He signed for a lot of money. His numbers dipped, and he noticed that the paper bag that was always left at his hotel door started getting lighter to the point where it just stopped showing up. So he just left in the middle of the night. There was another great
Russia,
one.
Man. Russia.
I'm trying to remember which player it was. I want to say Ryan Whitney told a story where all the players just went to the bank where there was just this like old lady just handing them all bags of money. And that's how they were paid. I believe Alex Radulov used to make $9.2 million in the KHL because that's what I was told. That's
Supposedly. You don't know, though.
It could have been actually $4 million. It could have been 20. I don't know.
All right, so let's get back to questions. Let's get some more questions in.
MLB luxury tax is set at $189 million, which 6 teams have ever gone over.
Woo!
All of them named New York.
Yeah.
Do you ever see this from Reddit again? Do you ever see the league changing the cap to reflect local taxes?
That is a great one. I saw that.
I like that.
I don't really see it. I think that plays into making some locations more attractive. Like most of the teams that have high taxes are teams that are attractive to go to. So it kind of evens out. Like a New York is attractive to go to, obviously. Who wouldn't want to live in New York? Toronto is attractive to go to for certain reasons. The California teams all have high taxes.
Montreal.
Whereas
boy.
the lower tax areas are teams like in Alberta, Arizona, Florida. So those teams might need a little bit more help. So I think it helps with the balance of like what locations are more attractive to players.
See, that's actual parity, though. So you three should be for that. I'm just saying. Just saying. I'm not trying to be argumentative. I'm just saying. And especially I feel bad for Quebecers because their taxes are really high, really, really high, even by Canadian standards. And if you go to the States, like they talk about like Canadian taxes, like, so what do you actually get for all the money that you're paying in?
Oh, man, you should have seen the face on the people in Pittsburgh when so what do you guys pay? I'm like, 13%. They're like, what?
Yeah, they don't even have sales tax there, I don't think.
No, I keep telling the story. We went on a music trip with my high school in 2005, and I bought a $39 pair of jeans for $39, and it blew my fucking mind. I was like, what?
See, I like that idea. I like that to reflect the local tax. Like Nashville, there's like no income tax.
Yeah.
The woman behind the register was so annoyed because I'm like, okay, but how much are they? She's like, 30, like pointing at the tag. I'm like, I don't get it. I don't get it.
Dalton wants to know if there's going to be any compensation if Vesey doesn't sign with Buffalo.
No. So
Jimmy Vesey.
So the only way you get compensation for a player is if they are a first-round pick and then you are unable to sign them and they re-enter the draft or sign with another team. And that you get the equivalent pick in the second round. So if you drafted him 23 overall, you get him 53rd. And I think that happened with Connor Bleakley with Arizona this year.
Wow.
Now, Nashville could have easily, Buffalo could have easily made that a conditional pick, conditioned on whether or not he signs. They did not.
Correct. And I think Nashville was probably not willing to trade him on a condition. It sounds like VC's pretty convinced that he's going to free agency, or at least his agent is. So Nashville definitely wanted to get something out of it. They seemed pretty upset with how the situation went, so I'm sure they wouldn't have traded his rights unless the team was willing to risk a pick for it.
What do you think about a deal like that?
I think it's worth the gamble. I mean, if you can sign him, that's a big ad. And you really have to weigh how well you can woo the player. I mean, they've got Jack Eichel, who apparently practices and trains with Jimmy Vesey, so maybe there's a way to get at him that way. They keep saying that he's going to go to free agency, but I don't know. I wouldn't give up a third-round pick unless I had a good hunch, so maybe they have a good hunch.
Devil's advocate, Tim Murray said, I believe the quote was, you have a 7% chance of drafting a player as good as Jimmy Vesey in the third round.
He also, I don't know if you saw the quote, he also today, they asked him if they would use Jack Eichel as a tool to sign Jimmy Vesey, and then he responded that he would be a tool not to.
What?
Wow. Damn.
I think the show wants to like him so bad.
Oh.
So bad. But he's the Buffalo GM.
That's a quick line.
And just...
Man.
I mean, Jesse didn't chortle at all.
No.
You didn't like that line? I liked it.
Here's one that I meant to ask you like an hour and a half ago. The Leafs gave up a Pittsburgh's first, and a 2017 second for Frederick Andersen. Who's second? Because they had 3 next year.
Welcome to the world of Lou Lamoriello, where you will probably never know.
Really?
So we
Not
don't
until
know
the
yet.
draft day.
We've assumed it's the San Jose one, just to pick one. Basically, I assume they're not giving up their own because why give up your own unless
They're
Anaheim
probably-
required it.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, I would say it's probably the Ottawa or the San Jose one. We've got a couple calls out to try to find out, and so hopefully we find out before
He's that tough,
next year.
He's that tough to crack?
Yeah.
We haven't dealt with him directly, and that's probably because he's that difficult to crack. But yeah, since he's been in there, Toronto's been on lockdown, and you hear that from all the reporters. So it's tough to get information out of there, but I'm sure someone will get it eventually.
I would assume that we wouldn't go past this weekend without knowing, because it's the 2016 draft.
Well, it's the pick. The second round pick is in 2017.
No, I know that, but like trades happen all the time where it's like, here, you give me this fifth for your next year's fifth because there's a guy we actually really like, and there's all kinds of those little deals. Like, there's no way they keep it a secret through this weekend. Also, why? What's the point?
Wouldn't it just be funny if we didn't know until next year's draft and they announced the order?
Somebody walks
That would
up to
be
the table.
incredible.
Like, by the way, just in case anybody was wondering, it's Toronto's pick now that they traded to the thing. So like it would be Anaheim via San Jose, and that's I think that would be hilarious, and I'm sure Lou would do something like that just to toy with us all.
And tells Anaheim, and if you tell anyone which pick it is,
You owe us another pick. You owe us.
Wow.
I wonder if that's a condition of the trade.
plus I break your thumbs.
You look at the Frederick Andersen signing, and I know what's out there is that it's still in the works and there's still something that they're finalizing. But all we know for sure right now is an AAV, and it's been over a day. Typically, any other team that signs, we have entire salary breakdown within like 5 minutes.
How do they do that? How do they lock a team down like that, do you think?
You hire Lou Lamoriello as general manager.
Yeah, you threaten them with Robidaw Island.
I heard a great story, and it was very unspecific, so like no one is implied. But basically, like someone with MLSE was just having like a friendly conversation with a friend, someone who didn't work for MLSE. Just having a friendly conversation, and Lou Lamoriello walks by and just gives the guy a pat on the shoulder. And the guy turned like white as a ghost, simply because he didn't know Lou was there, and he just kind of appeared. So it sounds like, and the guy wasn't doing anything wrong. He was just having a conversation with his friend. But this guy scares the shit out of people for whatever reason, and also knows what he's doing.
All right. That's cool. Cassie, next question.
Wade wants to know if you have any plans for a mobile app.
Oh.
Yeah, so at one point I had started building a mobile app, and the I guess the decision I've made is to continue to focus on the desktop app or the desktop site. Obviously, our site is mobile friendly. I understand the need for a mobile app and sort of the advantages of it. So we haven't given up on that, and I am actually looking for some help this summer from some people that I know to actually to take that further and start to develop the mobile app a little bit further. So it will be somewhere down the line. We do. Our focus is though on the desktop site, and we have a lot planned for it. So that's kind of our priority.
Can't wait for it.
Well, thank
Can't
you.
wait for it when it happens. I will be first day download on that.
Oh my God. Charge for it.
It's
Charge
bookmarked.
$5.
I've got you in my top 5 bookmarks on my browser. So it's like right across the screen. It's like,
I don't. I type in G.
I prefer to click, Steve. Okay?
You're right.
Okay.
You're right. But my computer is like, we know.
we get it.
Here we go. My computer is a group.
Road Warrior writes, what kind of sources do you have? Do you ever text?
Can you name
everybody?
Do you ever text anybody in the NHL when you're looking for deals, that sort of thing?
Yeah, so obviously when I launched, I didn't have a single source in the industry, and I figured, hey, whatever, I'll do it. And it was part of the thinking that the site wouldn't take off, whatever, I don't need sources. And then day 2, when it blew up, I think it was day 3 when we had our first person in the industry contact us and was like, hey, if you ever need anything, the site's great, let us know. And it kind of just, when that happened, it kind of just clicked. I should just contact anybody and everybody that I could and see if they're willing to help. And so I did a lot of cold calls and that sort of stuff. And a lot of people also just reached out. And now we have a ton of contacts in the industry. We text some of them. A lot of the info we get by email, sometimes by calling. But yeah, it comes from all over the industry, like people on the team side, people in the PA, people like agents, like I said earlier, players' families. So it comes from all over the place, and we're extremely grateful for it. Obviously, we can't tell who specifically, but yeah, everyone's really willing to help because they see the value in the site, they use it themselves, and they want the information to be as accurate as possible.
And let that be a lesson to the young, aspiring whatevers listening to this show. You'd be surprised who you can simply call. You'd be amazed. If you call up, like, let's say you live in Ontario or Western Canada, Quebec, all of Canada. Let's say you live in a town with a junior hockey team. You'd be surprised. You could probably just call them up and be like, I want to interview them for my school newspaper. I bet you there's at least a 50% chance they'll say yes. And that applies to ECHL teams, AHL teams, and I'm going to go with even the Arizona Coyotes. No, NHL teams might even oblige you too.
Yeah, like that's one thing I've learned. Like just over a year ago, I had no contacts in the industry, and since then we've acquired a lot, and everybody is willing to give up their time. Like so many people in the industry are so friendly, and it's much more tight-knit group than you think, and everybody is willing to spare some time. Even if they're not willing to help you with what you're after in terms of information, they'll compliment your site. They'll tell you, hey, I can't really help you with this, but if you need something else in the future, let me know. And they give you the time. It's not like people ignore your emails or ignore your calls. They'll get back to you, and it's awesome.
That's cool. That's really, really cool. And the fact that you cold called people, that's not easy to do.
Yeah. It was kind of awkward at first. I thought I was pretty much encroaching on people's personal time, and they would hate me for it and probably report me to Gary Bettman, and then he'd come after me. But no, everybody was really nice about it.
Have you talked to Gary?
No, I haven't.
And it's no simple request. You're asking for contract information.
No,
like a lot of people hold that near and dear.
Yeah, and a lot of that stuff, like certain contracts that we even sign at work, we can't legally show anyone.
Like imagine there was a general Kiss 92 Fanager out there, and you could just see Adam Wilde and Jesse Blake's salary information. Just why not?
Yeah, like
and their cap hit against Rogers.
Adam has a no trade clause.
I do. No move. Full no move.
We are good on questions.
We're good on. You know what, Tom? Not only has this been it's fun listening to you because we rant, rave and stuff, but nobody really knows, I think, at least publicly, the cap like you do outside of the league, right? And I mean, there might be, you might deny that, but for us, you know a lot more than I think most of us could ever hope to know about it. And so for you to have built this site in this amount of time, and have come as far as you have with it is pretty incredible. And I hope that at some point this summer you take a moment and just like realize that, because that's pretty freaking cool, man. What you've done is awesome. And Steve is making fun of me right now. I don't know why.
No, I'm making fun of Jesse for eating pizza.
Jesse's
which I am doing the second.
It's amazing. And you have all of, and for what it's worth, the respect of everyone on this show and in the respect of everyone listening for doing something like this. It's awesome. Congratulations on it.
Well, thanks so much. And it means a lot. This is going to sound like I'm kissing some good ass here, but you guys have made
There are some good asses in this room.
Yeah.
You guys made a show out of nothing, so you guys should give yourselves a pat on the back. I'm sure we were all in the same situation at some point where we loved a sport and we wanted to do something more with it, and we tried and it worked out.
Let's all pat each other.
Yeah, the difference, I guess, is that nobody's reaching out to us to share any information on a regular basis. Well, oh, really?
Not on a regular basis,
no.
You're right. Every now and then we're like, really?
Yeah. More Steve than the rest of us. But, but yeah, congratulations on it. We hope you'll come back, and we hope we can call you from time to time to try to understand what's going to happen. Because the next 2 weeks, I know you're not going to sleep much, and it's going to get funky, so you're going to have to help us out.
Yeah, all right.
One more, actually. Has a deal ever broken in the middle of the night and you were just like, I'm leaving this to the morning, screw you all, or you just got up and updated it right away?
if I have woken up, I have always updated it right away. There was one that was missed, and I'm trying to remember what it was. Bob McKenzie reported it at like
What?
2 or 3 a.m. one night, and I can't remember who. I think it was the Hagelin trade. And it happened like 2 or 3 in the morning, and I was out cold. I woke up at, I think, 5:30 in the morning to some alerts on my phone. I was like, all right, I'll do it now then. But I don't think too many people missed it in that 2 to
No, I don't think so.
window.
Goligoski, by the way, he just signed, right? We didn't mention that on the show.
I think I haven't seen an official report yet, but it's really close. Yeah, so 5.5, I think they're saying for 5 years.
Wow.
But I don't think it's official.
And that's in Arizona?
That's Dave Bullen money.
That's right.
So that brings them back to about $14.5 million before they hit the floor.
Well, see, now my question is, because that tweet we saw came after the Goligoski report.
After it.
So I don't know if that number includes him or not. I guess we can check General Fanager
tomorrow morning.
In 45 minutes by the sounds of it from this freaking guy.
Well, honestly, Tom, thanks so much for taking time for us. Thank you to all the NHL GMs, players, agents.
I just got some breaking news.
That I was just going to talk about, yeah?
It looks like Freddie Andersen's deal with the Leafs will have a 10-team trade list or something around that. So yeah, they're still working out the details, but that's what it sounds like. It'll probably be around. So
does that mean, or do you need more details to know this? He has to be protected.
It depends on if it's a no move clause for the 2017-18 season. So we'll see.
Okay. I would assume even if he has to be protected. I mean, they made their bed with him, right?
Yeah.
He's their goalie. So.
Yeah. Again, thank you to all the agents, players, general managers, all of them for not doing anything tonight. Too crazy. Knowing that and knowing Goligoski, I'm cool with that because there's a lot more things that could have happened in the time that it took to record the show.
Steven Stamkos.
And I know you want to get home and update your site, and thank you so much for the service you provide us all because it's truly one of the best resources out there for hockey fans.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
Thanks, buddy.
Follow the guys on Twitter at Steve_Dangle, at Adam WYLDE, and at Jesse Blake.
The Steve Dangle Podcast. Brought to you by Panago Pizza. Order at panago.com and stuff your face with deliciousness.